I'll never forget. We're just like in this, freshman dorm, and there's these two British guys who I became friends with who were DJs, and like they just had like a small little, rinky dink deck. That to me was like looked insane, like all these buttons and lights and shit, and I was like, wow, that's impressive. And all the girls in this room were just like hovering around them. They were all just like locked in, just like fixated.
The Gen Z Podcast. 4 voices, unfiltered opinions on today's topics. We welcome you to speak freely and think deeply about today's episode.
Welcome back to the Gen Z Podcast, our second iteration of the rebrand. Now this is episode number 36 of our podcast in general. But in this podcast, we welcome on Nadav, who dives deep into the mantra, I would say, of you live 2 lives. One before you find your passion and one after. And he takes us through his life with DJing, traveling, and much, much more. So we hope you enjoy this conversation as much as we did. And welcome to the pod.
So what's funny to Nadav, and I don't know if you remember this story about how we met, but you remember those gown, that like almost graduation thing that we had on like the first day?
Oh yeah, like the commencement, like yeah. The first like official day of Georgetown.
Yeah,
100%.
I remember we were in line, and I don't know if our like sort of like DMV like senses were going off or something, but like we started talking, and I think we were talking about like some underground like DC rap or something. And then you had told me you went to BCC.
Oh, we're talking about like Cue to Fool or some shit.
Yeah. No, it's so funny. It was on that first day. And then fast forward 4 years later, it's like, well, initially it's like this skinny little white kid, and then, turns out 4 years later, and he's the coolest guy on campus. I sort of, I was telling Gavin and the other guys in sort of prep for this, how I was going through my Snapchat memories, and from the times at Abigail's to the Darties.
Yeah.
And, so, I guess sort of our first question, I think, what around this conversation, and I think what we want to hear is sort of like, what was your Georgetown experience like? And then, sort of what was your introduction to like DJing and that cool stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I felt like my perception and like experience at Georgetown was somewhat unique, being from the DMV. Like, and I was also, my father being a professor there, I was like very apprehensive to even go in the first place because I didn't want to stay close to home. I had applied to schools in Canada and was likely going to go to like McGill or University of Toronto. But then once I got in, I would just like thought about it more, and I was like, okay, this is like really a great opportunity. But my perception of Georgetown, just like from everything I knew, and it's my dad never brought Georgetown home. Like it wasn't like I didn't go to campus and visit him or shit like that. I mean, we always talked about like the Hoyas and, the basketball team, but that was really about it. And so my perception of it was just like very like white, waspy, vineyard vines, like pastel shorts, like that type of thing, that type of vibe, which was a lot of what my high school was, but that's a Chevy Chase high school. And I was like, that's what I'm trying to get away from. But then I went to the accepted students day and was just like, wow, like some of these people are fascinating. The professors are really cool. And it just seemed like a really interesting environment. And I was like, what, might as well give it a shot. If I don't like it, I'll transfer after a year. And that's, more or less what I did. And then within my first week, I was like, wait, this place is amazing. The people are so much more interesting than I thought. And I, I'm to this day incredibly lucky to have met some of my closest and for sure lifelong friends within my first like 2 weeks at Georgetown. And, particularly compared to a lot of my other high school friends, college experiences who really, really struggled at first. And a lot of friends who came home, struggled with, drugs or drinking, whatever it may be, gambling, all kinds of sort of issues. I always felt so like secure and confident at Georgetown. And I think maybe it was because I was close to home. And so I just that was not on my mind. I didn't have like I wasn't, homesick or anything like that. And I just think that gave me sort of a leg up when it's really your first time leaving home and living in a totally different environment. And I also, everyone at Georgetown did, charms, which is like how you would find your roommate. And that the summer you would like do it in the summer leading up to freshman year. And that whole summer I was just like, I want to travel. Like I've been working since I was 14 in like the service industry. And like that was instilled in me from a very young age. It's like, do whatever you want as long as you can support yourself and afford it. And so, I saved up money throughout high school, and then just like the summer leading up to freshman year, just spent the whole summer traveling, doing random stuff, visiting people. And so I just missed that whole process. Like I created the profile and then just forgot about it. And a week before school starts, I'm like, wait, like, where am I even living? Who am I living with? And everyone's like, oh, you're fucked. Like you're going to live with some like psychopath serial killer. Ended up rooming with this guy, Sid, who unfortunately actually passed away this past fall. Great guy. Ended up becoming one of my best friends. Really stand-up individual. Such a cool guy. He grew up in he went to boarding school in Hong Kong and like kind of very international upbringing. He's like his parents are from India and just really, really interesting guy and spent a ton of time traveling and just like very worldly. And also came into it being like he had a girlfriend and just like wasn't nearly as interested in doing like the normal sort of college thing. And he like, you know, grew up a lot faster than I think most people do since he went to boarding school, you know, abroad. And so he was fascinating, and like we just became really, really good friends and stayed friends throughout all of our whole time at Georgetown, you know, until he, you know, unfortunately passed away. And so that was just like immediately I was like, wow, like I feel really lucky. Everyone's like, you're so screwed. You're gonna, you know, it's just the first week. He seems cool now. Like something's gonna happen. And so that was sort of like right off the bat. I was like, wait, this is, you know, things are going well. I'm liking it. Started enjoying my classes, that sort of thing, and just like finding interesting people. And so overall, just like broadly speaking, I had a fantastic time. I really loved Georgetown, and you know, I'm so happy every day that I made the decision to actually go and didn't turn my back on it like I initially wanted to do. And my mom was the one who pushed me to be like, you should really explore this option. Like it's a fantastic school. Because my father's a professor, like I got a big tuition discount. Which made the student loan burden much less than what it would have been having gone to any other school, even the schools in Canada, which are a lot cheaper than what they are in the U.S. And again, just like I ended up meeting so many cool international people from all over the world, Latin America, Europe, the Middle East, Asia. And there's definitely like a big population. And there are like the waspy, white, homogenous, like Vineyard Vines wearing folks. Like that still very much exists. And that was a lot of my fraternity as well. Like, you know, I'll very much admit it. But it wasn't just that. There was a lot more outside of that you could just, if you were, it was anything you wanted it to be, really. And I so tried to take advantage of every opportunity that I could find there. And then sort of going into the DJing thing, like, you know, as anyone is as a freshman trying to sort of like, not like make a name for themselves, but like find new interests and find new things and like define themselves in some way. I'll never forget, we're just like in this, you know, freshman dorm, and there's these two British guys who I became friends with who were DJs, and like they just had like a small little, you know, rinky dink deck, that to me was like looked insane, like all these buttons and lights and shit. And I was like, wow, that's impressive. And all the girls in this room were just like hovering around them. They were all just like locked in, just like fixated. I was like, and these are just like some normal dudes, just, you know, of course they have the British accent that, you know, goes a long way as well. But I was like, okay, like they're just pressing buttons. Like I don't even know what they're doing, but it doesn't look that hard. They're just like choosing songs, mixing it in, whatever. And all these girls are just locked in. And for like a week, they're talking about these two guys and like the DJs, like the British DJs. And I was like, you know what? Like I don't necessarily need to be a DJ, but like that looks kind of fun. It clearly got them, you know, some attention from the ladies. So I like went on Amazon and I was like, let me see, you know, is this expensive? Like what, you know, can I try this out? Bought like a little rinky dink board for $80 on Amazon. And then for the next like 2 months, put my roommate through hell, just like making just sounds and just terrible. It was god awful. And anyone who like heard me play at the beginning was like, yeah, you were really bad. Like you were terrible. And I was, and I would make all of my friends like listen to me play, and any opportunity to like DJ, whether we were just like a few of us hanging out, like I would like, you know, someone had a funeral, I'd be like, yeah, I got you, I'll DJ, you know, just like any opportunity. I was just trying to do it and get better at it. And then like, you know, I joined a fraternity freshman year as well, and we had like these semester goals that we had to do. And my semester goal, like initially I was like, I want to like be like, I want to become like the frat DJ, like that's what I'll do. And that's not actually what I ended up doing for my goal. I did something a lot stupider, but which I guess you can edit this out, right? I'm like, I want to tell you guys, but I don't want this to go on the internet. Like the social scene revolves a lot around like bars and clubs. Like it's not like, other schools where it's like house parties, frat parties. Like we would have like darties and like small like mixers and that sort of thing. But it was, house parties never lasted past midnight. And so all of these bars and clubs that we were going to all had DJs as well. And so I was getting exposed to that at the same time. And so I started just doing like our fraternity darties, just DJing again, really bad. Like I was not good, like at all. And, still blessed this day that they were just like, whatever, fuck it. Like this guy can do it. It's, it looks cool, even if it doesn't sound good. Like, people are enjoying it. And then like my first time doing it was, the St. Patrick's Day darty in the spring of freshman year. And again, like still, I'm really not that good. And go home that summer. I do it a few times here and there. I go home that summer, and my friend Caleb hit one of his good friends who was a bit older. He was like managing a nightclub and promoting, also being a full-time student and like running a startup. He's just like a very entrepreneurial guy, not what you would expect from like your normal promoter at all. Like this skinny blonde white dude from Greenwich, Connecticut. He's not, doesn't even drink that much like at these clubs. He's just like realizing there's a ton of money to be made in this space, particularly at Georgetown, where people are going out to these clubs already. And so if you can direct them to one place, you can just get a cut of whatever their spend is. And Georgetown kids, like there's plenty of wealthy kids who are just buying tables, no matter where they're going. Like they're just like they're not going to go to the club without buying a table. And these tables are run anywhere from like $500 to $2,000. And if you're just getting a small percentage of that, like that adds up quite a bit. And particularly in college, like that's a lot of money. Like if you're coming home with even just a few $100 from a night out, like you're not spending money, you're making money. Like that's awesome. Like that's great. And you're just out partying. And so he was trying to get out of promoting, and Caleb was not trying to get into promoting, but just like trying to organize stuff. And like, Micah knows him. He's just like an organizer. That's just sort of his vibe. Like he just likes to organize people and whatever it may be. And yeah, he's really good at it. And he's a brilliant, brilliant guy, really smart. And he knew we were in the same fraternity. And so he was just like, yo, like I'm going to, organize something with this guy, JD. Do you want to DJ? It was like, wasn't going to be paid anything, but it was at a nightclub, like Abigail nightclub, which is, as far as DC nightclubs go, like it's pretty nice. Like it's a good spot for DC. But at the time I was like, this is sick. Like this is like a proper, they have smoke machines and lasers and lights and all this shit. And like, I had never even seen like a real professional DJ board. And I pull up with my own little, like that tiny little thing. And I'm like, so where do I plug in? And they're like, nah, that's not how it works. Like, and I was like, I don't know how to use this piece of equipment that you're putting in front of me. Like, it's massive and it's $10,000 worth of equipment. Like, I don't even feel comfortable like breathing on it. And they're just like, all right, like begrudgingly, like they really don't want me to set up my board on top of their shit. And they're like, okay, fine, whatever. Like, the clock is ticking. We need the music to start playing. And so my laptop, I had like my backpack with my headphones, my laptop, like, just looking like an idiot. And that was the first time like I played in a club. And it went well. And I stayed afterwards and like met the manager and like some of the guys who ran the door. And eventually I met the owner, and just like sort of through that, just like formed relationships with different people in nightlife in DC. And just like, I mean, honestly, like that's all DJing really is. It's like networking, and building relationships with people. Like outside of that, like if you can't do that, you'll never, even if you're the best DJ in the world, you'll never get a gig. You can be the worst DJ in the world, like I was, and I was still getting gigs just because like I knew how to talk to someone and like, build that rapport, build that relationship. And at first I was doing it for like no money, or just maybe like $100 for a few hours of work or free drink tickets or whatever. But then the more I did it, I realized like they're making so much money off of what I'm doing, because then I'm telling all of my friends, like, come to this place I'm playing, like come, like, like I want them to be there to see it, and to support. And I was like, I'm bringing, anywhere from whatever, like 20 people to 100 people, anything in that range. I wasn't like actively like pushing people like hard to go to these places. I was just like, telling my friends, people in passing, I was like, oh, I'm playing at this place this weekend, like come through. And then also like these places just became big Georgetown spots. Like these are places people were going regardless. And I realized like I didn't even necessarily have to be the one directing them there, but because they're affiliated with Georgetown and I'm affiliated with Georgetown, they pretty much just assume it's like, oh, like the reason why they're coming is because you're playing. And this is still, again, like I'm not a good DJ by any means. Like I'm still like plugging in my little DJ board because I don't know what I'm doing with this professional equipment, which is a lot more advanced, complex, and harder to use than just like something like that in the background. And like one day I'm like, okay, like I need to actually learn how to do this properly. And so I texted, the owner and the manager. I was like, can I just come in like, a few hours before you guys open, like on some random Saturday afternoon and just like mess around and try and become comfortable with it. And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. Just like, stay out of everyone's way. Like people are going to be setting up, doing whatever they're doing. Just like, just be respectful. I was like, absolutely, say less. I got you. Thank you so much. And I just did that like a few times. I wasn't even playing those nights or anything because, the professional setups are a lot more complex and the barrier to entry there is a lot higher than just like, something that you plug into your laptop. And there is no laptop. It's separate screens and you have to actually know how to beat match and also just use this, pretty technical interface that has a lot of buttons, a lot of them that really are useless and you never even touch or use. But it's intimidating at first. So many buttons and like so many. And like that's why like I always joke. It's like DJ like when people are like, oh, DJs are artists. I'm like, I don't know if they really are. Like some of them are like the ones who make music and play their own music are. But like fundamentally all DJing is having a good taste of music, being able to read a crowd and knowing how to press the buttons and what buttons to press at the right time. Like dead ass, like that is fun. Fundamentally, that is what DJing is. Like, it is not more complex than that. And so people who get like really uppity about it and they're like, oh, it's like this, fine art and it's this. And it's like, no, you're full of shit. Like, there's a reason why everyone and their mother is a DJ now. And like, since COVID, like everyone's because it's objectively not that difficult. What's difficult is having a good taste of music, a good sense for the crowd and be able to read the room and see what people respond to and not just playing the music that you want to hear. And then also building relationships and networking. That's what's difficult, and that's what most people like do. Like they think of those things secondary, but that's really like all that counts. And so that's pretty much all I did.
So going back a little bit, right? You had mentioned like sort of the two British guys and all these girls being around them, and then you had mentioned like sort of finally getting started and then doing the show at Abigail's. Were either of those moments sort of that wow, this is actually pretty cool, or like that aha moment where you're like, oh, I kind of like doing this a little bit? Or was it something else?
It was the aha moment because up until then it was still just like a novelty. I thought it was really cool, but like I didn't get to enjoy it as much because I was so focused on not fucking up in front of other people that it was also like pretty stressful. Like it's stage fright, whatever. And like I wasn't enjoying the benefits of actually DJing just because I was so fixated and focused on doing that stuff. But it was the Halloween of sophomore year and through like a huge party at Abigail and packed the place out there. I mean, this club probably has this place has a capacity of like 350 people. And there was at least 800 people there. Like it was this was a fire hazard. Like it was bad. I mean, it was wall to wall. You could not move. And it was honestly like, if you were not on a table or like behind the DJ booth, like it was probably not fun. Like you're just like smashed into like a sardine, just like, getting shoved around. But it was insane to like, that was the first time that I felt like I played really well. And also within like, usually I was just like opening for people. Like it wasn't, I was playing from like 10 to 11:30 when there's not really anyone there. And this was like, I was playing like, midnight to 1 a.m. They only gave me an hour, but I was like, that's all I need. And it was like playing to a packed club. And like, you could play like chicken scratch, fucking like SpongeBob sounds, and people would have just gone wild because it was just that kind of energy in the room. But it was, and so I loved it. And I was like playing a little bit more like music that I was more interested in that I thought was like more obscure and unique compared to the normal sort of like mainstream like EDM commercial hits, which is like I'll get into that part later, but that was really like when I was like, wait, this is sick. Like I'm getting free booze. I just made $500 for playing an hour, and I'm just like now like everyone in this club now is like looking at me, knows who I am when I'm coming down. And it's like girls are coming up to talk to you. They want to come in the DJ booth. They want like to take they want to drink from your bottle or something, whatever it may be. And it's definitely very sort of like vain. It's just like you're like sort of the center of attention. But it was as a 18, 19 year old, it was like, this is sick. Like, this is so cool. And I'm getting paid to be here, and I'm bringing in my friends for free that are getting to skip the line. Like, there is no better feeling than like there's a long ass line for a club, and you just like strut to the front, and they just like they open like they had like these red velvet like ropes sort of like you know what I'm talking about, like the like, red velvet rope things that they use like separate the lines, and they would just like someone would open it like and step back and like let me in, and then people would try and follow me and they'd be like, oh, stop, whoa, you can't, not you. And I'd be like, no, they're good, they're with me, and they're like, okay, all right. So that was a really cool feeling. And
What's that
huh?
school?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it would feel like. And like when you're 19 years old, like I'm literally underage. Like I'm not even legally allowed to be in this club,
Yeah.
And I'm just like getting free bottles. I'm like bringing my friends in. I'm getting paid, and like literally, I made like $500 for 1 hour of work, and I was like, that is the dumbest money I've ever made in my life. And as a 19-year-old, I mean, still now, $500 is a lot of money. Like you can have a lot of fun with that. So I was just like, wow, like
Do you think
yeah.
that was like the moment where it was kind of a turning point? You're like, damn, I could actually take this and run with it. And like,
Yeah.
did you ever have a time where you bombed it and it was just a terrible experience for you?
There's more than I can even count. Like, there's so many. Like, there's not even one instance that I could just immediately comes to mind because there's so many. Like, and my friends will tell you, like, there was like, I was, again, like, it really comes down to like networking and choosing the right music and reading the crowd. But like the transitions, terrible. Like, it was like clashing sounds, all this stuff. But at the same time, like, when you're in these club environments, like, it's only a split second of that, and like everyone's drunk and like no one's even paying attention. Like half the time they're not even listening to the music; they're like just in La La Land doing whatever. But there was so many and like events that I organized that just bombed, that like no one showed up to, and that's like that really sucks because not only is it reflect poorly on you, but like you've let down the people that you're working with. And like once I got into organizing events, it's like not just you, but it's like I was lucky that I'd built sort of, I don't want to say like built a name for myself, but I built like relationships with people where they really trusted me. And normally to, throw an event at a club, like you have to put down anywhere from like 5 to 10K or agree to meet a bar minimum of like anywhere from like 5 to 10K. Like it's not something you can just like go and do at like a notable venue. And that, like at Georgetown, like there's always people organizing events and they're just renting out these venues. Like they're putting up money and they're not getting anything for that money other than the venue. And it's crazy because like not only are they paying the venue to host, but then they're spending all this money on drinks. And as Micah knows, like these like Abigail, like it's like New York, and in college paying $20 for a vodka soda or a tequila soda is crazy. But you're gonna get 5 of them or 6 of them, and you're gonna buy the girl next to you like and her friends a round of drinks too, because that's just like, even though you have no money. I mean, the amount of times that my mom, like I just had a debit card, but it was like under my parents' account. It was just my money, but it was like under like the umbrella of their like bank, and their personal bank accounts. And the amount of overdraft fees that I was getting, because I was just like literally taking my debit card into a negative. It's not a credit card. Like you can't spend money that you don't have with a debit card. And my mom was like, you have to get your own bank account. Like this is like reflecting poorly. I mean, obviously like I'm paying for all these fees and it's my money that I'm overspending. But she's like, I can't be associated with this. Like, this is a bad look for me. Like, I've been banking with this bank for like 20 years and like I have a good relationship with them and you're just ruining that. And so that's what's like, okay, like I need to like get my shit together, not spend so much money, not be so reckless, not buy every girl I see a drink. But then at the same time, that's when I started DJing and actually started to have some more income aside from, I worked at a coffee shop, at Georgetown, but I only worked like, 10 hours a week. So it really, it was enough money for, a few beers here and there, but nothing crazy. And so the moment I was making like, literally just like $100 an hour for DJing, I was like, this is insane. Like this, and as a 19-year-old, that's stupid money just for literally showing up to a place, playing some music, and then having fun. And I don't even know where I was going. Yeah, it was great. It was great. I loved it.
Yeah. So I mean, sort of fast forward, right? You were 19, 20, and you're 24, 25 now, right?
Yeah, 24.
So sort of, you mentioned sort of, making and then maintaining relationships, and then sort of like obviously you live in New York now. You know, you would you know, so I guess the question is like, what are you doing now? What does your, you know, Monday through Friday look like? What do your weekends tend to be? Do you still get to DJ? Are you still putting on events from time to time? What does that sort of look like nowadays?
Yeah, absolutely. So now it's definitely like slowed down. When I first moved to New York in the fall, I was like I was just sort of working like a part-time job at a mezcal company, and then also doing like managing like their partnerships. And then I was bartending, and I was also DJing, and I was just like I just moved to the city. I was just trying to afford my rent, and I, you know, took a slightly different path than most of my peers at Georgetown. And, you know, during COVID, I took a gap year because being from the DC area, like most of my friends came back, rented houses in the Georgetown neighborhood, and just took their classes virtually from there. And my parents were like, "Fuck no, we're not paying rent, crazy rent in a place 20 minutes down the road where you're just gonna be taking online classes." And I also was like, "That's ridiculous. I also don't want to pay full tuition for online education. Like, I didn't see any value in it. I got like a taste of it that spring when, like, you know, after spring break we went online before the summer. I was like, this sucks. I'm not getting anything out of this." And I genuinely enjoy school and I love learning. And so like if I'm not actually learning or engaging with it, like what's the point? I'm just taking out student loans for nothing. And at the same time, I lost the opportunity to go abroad. So I took this gap year. I convinced two of my best friends to move to Colorado with me. And I like fulfilled a lifelong dream of mine of like ski bumming. And I worked at a ski resort as a ski lift operator for a year, lived like in employee housing there, and just spent the entire year skiing, having the best time of my life. But then because of that, best decision I've ever made, it like pushed my graduation back. Instead of graduating in May of 2022, like all of my other friends, I ended up graduating in December of 2022. And so that was sort of like the start of, okay, like I'm going to do things a little bit differently. And initially that wasn't even my thought process. I was just like, I'm not going to take out student loans for an online education. Like that's in my mind crazy. I also am no longer able to go abroad. So I want to have some sort of just like cool experience living somewhere else. And I've always wanted to ski. So that was like, I did that. But I didn't really think about like the ramifications or the impact of that, like later down the line. And so all my friends graduate. I do like my senior year, like 2022, as if like I was graduating that year. But I knew I had one more semester. And so that summer, whenever everyone like leaves and goes on like their, you know, post grad like trips, we were in Europe, whatever they're doing, whatever the fuck they're doing. I like to do an internship, and I do like a financial consulting. It was the most boring shit ever. It was executive compensation consulting, but it was like, you know, a good like consulting firm in Midtown Manhattan. It was like, it checked all the boxes on paper in terms of like what I was seeing everyone else doing, like, you know, the year before or the jobs that they were going into post grad. I was like, okay, this is like in line with those things. And in my mind, I was like, okay, that's what I should do. Like, I've been around all these like really wealthy kids. Like I want to make some money. Like I want to live that type of lifestyle. And so I did it for the summer, the most boring job in the world. Like actually just like so dull. I mean, executive compensation consulting, like you're telling people how much like they should be paid. Like it's just really just boring. You're just an Excel monkey. I hated it. But I got a return offer, and like on paper, again, it was a good job. Like, you know, it was like a starting salary of like 85, 90K, which to me was wild. Like that's that's, you know, more than, you know, my parents make, you know, with one of them. Like, and so I was like, this is like a really like a good opportunity. Checks a lot of boxes on paper, but I was like so unfulfilled that whole summer, and just was like, this is boring. Like I really don't like this. So I go back to school in the fall for my last semester. I get a return offer from them. I'm just like thinking over, and I'm just like, nah, fuck it. Like I'll figure something else out. Like I'm the type of person who like doesn't stop moving. I just like keep on going, or whatever I'm doing, I just like keep on going. So I was like, I'll figure it out. Like I'm really not that stressed about it. And then I was like, wait, like I don't even, you know, I'll give myself until the summer. Like I'm graduating in December. Like, you know, let me take some time, do some more traveling. And so that's what I did. And I spent all of sort of the spring. I went to Egypt and Spain and Turkey and all these different places, and just traveled for like a month and a half. And then I moved back to Colorado, spent the winter season out there, and did like, you know, did skiing again, just worked at a restaurant, was bartending, and had the best time of my life. Like I had the most amazing time of my life. And then my cousin, who I was really, really close with, he was like a big brother to me, he passed away. And so it just made me start like rethinking things. I was like, okay, like I do want to be closer to my family and friends. Because at this point, I'd been set. All of my friends had moved to New York. Like I had been separated from my friends for pretty much a year at this point. And these are people that I spent every single day of my life with for 4 years leading up to that point. And I was loving my life. I was very happy. I never felt like I was missing out on anything because I was doing my own thing, and everyone else was doing the same stuff that they always do, which I knew was always available to me. But then when my cousin died, I was just like, again, trying to figure out, okay, like what's my next move? I sort of put the whole job thing on the back burner and was just enjoying life. And I'm very happy that I did, because so many people just go straight into like, the 9 to 5 rat race, and they're all unhappy. I was always like talking to my friends like, oh, I hate my job. I hate my life. And I'm like, well, why are you doing it? Like, it's not like at this point, you're 22, 23 years old. Like, you have so much time to figure it out. And both of my parents are older. My dad's 74. My mom's like in her early 60s. And they both had full lives before they got married and had kids. And it was very different than like the upbringing of all of my friends whose parents were like in their 30s or 40s, or some like in their, late 20s when their like kids are like toddlers. And so my parents always like instilled with me like live your life, do your stuff. Like you have so much time. And, the time that you have when you're in your 20s is time you'll never get back. And it's a cliche. It's a total cliche, but it's really true. And I always was like, nah, like I want to work. I want to, buy into this sort of life that I'm seeing, all of my friends go into and that their parents did and X, Y, and Z. And I was really like, I bought into it as well. But then I realized, wait, this is so unfulfilling and incredibly boring and just like monotonous. And you're making good money, but you're living in New York where everything's already so expensive. It's like you're not actually like, that money doesn't really mean anything. Like you're not saving it. You're spending a ton on rent. Anytime you go out, you're dropping just like hundreds of dollars, like to go to dinner and then go to a bar and like Ubers, whatever, you name it. Everything in the city is so expensive. So it's like that money doesn't even really get you that far. But
Yeah,
to
no,
fast forward, sorry.
like love. I mean, a couple of notes there. I mean, like one Gavin, like I told you, is like super interesting. Like he's actually so interesting. Because I mean, we're going back, right? Go ahead, Gav.
I just wanted to say, like, the storytelling is great, and that message is exactly what our listeners are all about. It's like, all right, if you're going to the 9 to 5 every day, like that's just not gonna fulfill you. So
Yeah.
I definitely appreciate
If
that.
you hate it, right?
So
If
much.
you don't like
If
it,
you
really
if you don't like it, like there's people that do, and I have the utmost respect. Like I was just talking to my best friend yesterday, this guy Owen Hopkins, and we're just like, look, what I respect most in the world is people who care about anything. Like it can be something so dull, and like to me it might be meaningless, but if you care about something, like that gives you a sense of purpose and fulfillment, and like that's up to you to decide like what you want to care about. But that's my baseline for like happiness and for respect towards other people. It's like if you truly care about something and are genuine towards it, and obviously it takes time to figure out what those things are, but trying to figure that out is also caring about the like finding what you want to do and what makes you happy. Like that in and out of itself is also caring, because you're not just stagnant and complacent and letting the world pass you by and you're just sitting there and letting things happen to you. You are doing things. You are the driver of your own ship. And so like not to shit on the 9 to 5, like yeah.
Yeah, and you did that exactly. I mean, those are sort of the notes, right? Like you went from, all my friends are graduating in May of 2022, but like COVID is happening and I don't want to just like sit here and take classes online. So in the meantime, let me go to Colorado, right? Let me go travel the world and get that opportunity, right? You were always writing, your own ship, right? To take the analogy that you just used is like you were writing your own ship, right? And that's like super important. I think that's what we're really trying to get with the basis of this podcast when we have guests on, is people that are writing their own ship and doing what they deem or what is unique to them, like what tells the story. Nadav. So I really like that. So sorry to cut you off, but
no, not at all, not at all. That's the thing, is like I can tell a good story, but I also ramble and I can just like go on tangents and side quests very easily. So please, anytime I'm falling off the mark, like push me in the right direction.
So I mean, last time we saw each other, right? when we saw each other on the street, you were telling me that you were quitting your job and you were going on a trip to India. Tell us about that a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, I was actually that was such an like like honestly that was like a very pivotal point in the past like year and a half of my life because I was doing, I moved to New York, did my shit. I, was trying to figure it out, got a job doing tech sales, hated it. And that's when I saw you. I was like in a suit, like I just come from a different interview and I'd been interviewing for so many different jobs. Nothing was really landing. And I was like, fuck it. Like, I can't do this. I'm like struggling to wake up in the morning to go do this tech sales job. And I'm not confident that any of these other things are going to play out because nothing has played out at this point. So my parents had recently moved to India. And so I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to go visit them in India and, travel around there. It's dirt cheap. I have a home base if I want it. Like I can stay with them in Mumbai for as long as I want. And at that point, I was just like, I'm tired of, again, I felt like I was falling back into like, all right, I'm just doing what everyone else is doing. Like, I'm in New York, so like, obviously, I need to have a job of, I need to have a certain level of income. Otherwise, it's impossible to live here. I mean, it's just not
Right.
possible. It's not
Yeah.
feasible unless you have really wealthy parents who will bankroll you. And that's not the case for me. And, my parents were like, look, like, you're stressed. And I'm calling my mom constantly, like, I cannot handle this anymore. Like, I want to give up. I hate this. I'm stressed out. I'm just unhappy and I'm like I'm not saving any money. I'm just spending all my money on rent and going out, but none of it's making me happy. And she was like, yeah, like, doesn't sound like you're in a good spot right now. Like, you really, like, I don't think you should keep on just like, throwing shit at the wall until, hoping for something to stick, like, until you find something that you actually like find interesting and want to do. And I was like, I totally agreed with her. And so at that point, I was like, I'm going to India. I gave myself until the end of May, and that was like my deadline. I was like, if I can't get it figured, so I saw you probably like the first or second week of May,
Yeah.
something like that. And so I was like, all right, I'm literally giving myself only like a few more weeks because I kept on saying like, all right, I'm gonna keep on. I'm just gonna a little bit more, a little bit more. I was like, no, I'm giving myself until the end of May. If I haven't figured something out and found like a job or something that I really think should keep me here and is worthwhile, it's not worth all this like headache and depression and financial loss just to like go partying with my friends on the weekend. Like that's not what life is about. And for some people it is, and like again, like that's their own thing, but that's not what makes me happy. Um, and so I was just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna go to India. And when I saw you there, it's like that's actually the job that I came back from interviewing from was the job that I just started a month ago. And I was like, this is fine. I was so hyped. I was like, I finally found a job that I liked. But again, like I'd interviewed for countless jobs over, that 6-8 month period. And when I saw you, I was like, yeah, like I don't know, this is probably just going to be another one of those. Like they string you along, you do the interview process for 2 months, you go in person, you do the final round, and then you get ghosted. And then a month later, like, oh, sorry, like we went in a different direction. And which, by the way, on a completely different subject, like I hate that culture of just like now with jobs. It's just like, you see everything you just apply online, you shoot your shot with everything, and then you never even hear back. And it's like if you get an interview somewhere, like they should have the decency to at least like follow up and be like, you did not get the job, rather than keeping you sitting. But again, I don't want to. That's a whole nother conversation. Um, and so I'm just like, all right, and I'm still waiting. I haven't heard back from the company. So it's like, oh, it's a week. It's the last week of May, and I'm just like, all right, booking a flight. And so I had some credit card points, and so I combined that with some cash and got a one-way ticket, direct flight to Mumbai from New York City. And at that point, I didn't even know what I was going to do with my apartment. I was like, I know I can find a subletter. It's the summer. Their kids are interning. It shouldn't be that hard. And either way, it's like, I can't, I would, it would be, I'd be taking less of a loss just paying the rent and not even living here than I would be paying the rent and living here doing this other job, this like tech sales job. Because then on top of that, I'm going out, doing whatever, getting a coffee, $6, like whatever. So it's just like, even at the worst case scenario, if I can't find a subletter, like I'll be better off just like eating that, $1,700 in rent than I would be staying here
Because
and
you
just,
needed it, right? You needed
yeah,
it. You needed it. You needed sort of this spiritual, I wouldn't even say spiritual, but sort of this, humbling, like trying to figure
yeah.
out your path. So in
And a total
India,
reset, like a
did,
total reset.
did that happen? Would you say that did happen?
Yeah, well, too. So right as I'm like literally like I'm like boarding my flight, and I get a call from this like random number, and it's this firm, and like you got the job, like we'd love you to start this and that, and like can you start next week? And I'm like, oh, I'm actually about to board a flight to India. That's just not going to work. Like I'm really sorry. And they were like, oh, that sounds sick. And I explained like my parents are living there, like I really want to go visit them. I hadn't seen them for like 8 months at this point. And immediately they were like, that's awesome. That sounds sick. Like, go enjoy that. Like, have fun. Just like, give us an email when you're back in the next month or so, and, we'll get you started then. And that's when I was like, it was like, fuck, like, this is, I finally I found the right job with the right people that actually understand, like, the life that I want to cultivate and, what happiness is to me. And, like, that's part of it is traveling and having these new experiences. And so it was amazing. I went there with, like, a total, at that point, like, clear head. I was like, okay, I have something if I want it whenever I want to come back to New York. And now I'm about to board this flight just like almost stress free because I'm just like, all right, I can go into this and actually enjoy myself, and not be constantly stressed out about, oh, like, what am I going to do? I still need to figure life out. I still need to figure all that stuff out. Going to India isn't just going to like make my problems go away. Like that's just, a means to, it's not.
Yeah, reading the Bhagavad Gita a couple
Yeah,
times.
exactly.
Yeah, it's not gonna
Um,
solve all of life's problems.
Exactly. And it's like, I feel like it's such a cliche. It's like, oh, like you go to India or you go to Bali or Thailand for like this spiritual awakening or something. And that wasn't like my goal. I was just like, I need to get out of here. I need to do something different. I need to be in a different place. And I also really wanted to see my parents. I hadn't seen them in a long time. I'm really close, really, really close with my parents. And since they'd moved to India, it was like hard to even talk to them because the time difference is so much, or, such a significant difference in time. But I go and it's like the most incredible experience, so humbling. I mean, talk about like it's not. I mean, India is not easy living. Like it's not for the faint of heart. It's like it's there's just immense poverty everywhere you look. The heat is oppressive. It's like you step outside, it's 90 degrees, 100% humidity. It's filthy. It's chaos. It truly is. And it really was like sort of like grounding to be in this just like absolutely chaotic environment where no one gave a fuck. Like you literally try and cross the street, like people will run you down if you don't like assert yourself when crossing the street. And then also just like seeing the way that people live so incredibly differently. And I've been lucky enough to get to do a lot of traveling, and I always try. I'm more into like going off the beaten track and going. I'd much rather go to like a village in, Cambodia than like, go to Paris or something like that. I just think it's more interesting. I think you get a lot more out of it. And obviously there's value to any place that you can go, particularly internationally or even domestically. Like just go to new places. That's, the moral of the story. But I always like prefer those types of, more off the beaten track experiences. And so I had exposure to that in, different places I'd been to in like Egypt and Indonesia, in Peru and places like that. But it's just, I mean, India is another world. Like it is so, so, so incredibly different.
Yeah, it
And
allows you to take a step back, right? It allows you
big
to
time.
really take a step back, and we often mention humbling, but like when you see like what like poverty actually looks like, or like what your next meal could look like, or like the clothes that you're wearing, it really
Yeah,
allows you to really one like you are so lucky to be born in the United States.
absolutely. Like with
You're absolutely so lucky, and we take it for granted, and it allows you to realize that, like, dude, like your problems aren't that bad, right?
really not that bad. Like as
Yeah,
bad as you ever think they are. Like and that's not to take away from like people's problems, and like mental health is like a big issue in our generation. I've struggled with it as well, and it's like
right.
that doesn't like minimize your problems, but it does
Mhm.
contextualize things, and it makes you take a step back and realize, okay, maybe I don't need to put so much value or merit into these certain aspects of life that are like driving me crazy, stressing me out, making me depressed, whatever it may be. um, and Yeah, I mean, it was just really, it was a truly, truly incredible experience. And like seeing the way, people reacted to just like, I'd just be like, oh, like, getting a soda or a drink or anything, and just be like, keep the change. It's like literally 5 cents. And it's, that goes such a long way there. And, I also felt like, pretty privileged that like I was, there, and I was staying with my parents who have like a, pretty nice apartment. They have air conditioning. Most people there don't have air conditioning, and I was there in the middle of the monsoon season, so it's incredible, and during a heat wave. So it's literally like, 90 degrees with 100% humidity all day long. It's raining constantly, and people are literally like their roofs are made of tarp, and their floors, there's not like, separation between the outside and their floor. Like, they may have like a piece of plywood, but there's water seeping in, like, and it's, I mean, talk about like shitting bricks. Like, it is raining. Like, I have never seen rain like that in my life. And people just live through it, and they don't bat an eye at it, and they continue to keep on going, living their lives, doing whatever they have to do to put food on the table for their families, and just like have some like semblance of a normal life, whatever that may mean to them. And like, meanwhile, I'm like, going around, I'm like exploring the city, and then I'm coming back to like, my air conditioned oasis that was my parents' apartment. And like, even next to them, and they live in like what you would consider to this neighborhood called Bandra, and it's like considered like a pretty like, nice, wealthy neighborhood for like Mumbai standards. And it is like, you'll see people walking down the street with AirPods and whatever. It's like, there's a lot of like Western aspects to it. They have little coffee shops and stuff like that. But still in the middle of it, next to my parents' apartment, there's like a small slum. And, there's a guy who literally lives like right outside of the apartment in like pretty much a hut. And his job is just to sit there, and he's like sort of like the security guard for the building. But he literally just like sits there and just all day long just sits there outside, lives in this sort of like hut next to the building. And my parents were telling me that they spoken with him a little bit. He doesn't really speak much English, but they were able to communicate enough, and like found out like his family lives like in a village like hundreds of miles away, and he just does this for 10 months out of the year just to send money back to them in their rural part of India. And that's like the same story for so many people there. And there's like people who just live in these communal homes and apartments because they can only get work in whether it be Mumbai or New Delhi or any of these like big cities, but their families live in these like rural villages, and so they're completely separated from their families. They have kids that they're not raising, and like all this stuff, all just to provide something for them. And so getting to experience that, and I even spent one of my mom's friends out there runs an organization that does like slum cleanups like in these slums, and she's an Indian woman, and she just like goes to the slums and like helps clean, provides like medical assistance and aid. And so we spent a day with her like helping just like with the work that she was doing in one of these slums, and it's like no bigger than like 8 square blocks, like 2 kilometers, like 1.5 square miles of space. And 55,000 people live in this tiny little area. There's 2 functioning bathrooms for all 55,000 people. 2 bathrooms. Like, I kid you not, 2 bathrooms. And there's no running water. There's no like sewer system or any sort of like infrastructure. And like, I was literally seeing kids just like, drop trow and like take a dump, just like, looking me straight in the eye as if it was nothing. And I'm just like, wow.
Crazy. And
Nadav,
I complain about my shoebox in New York.
Yeah. Yeah.
To end up the podcast here, but I feel like you throughout your experiences have had like a super strong barometer for like centering yourself. And a lot of people might have taken that 9-to-5 job and been like, yeah, I'll just get the 90,000 and that'll be my life. But your almost personal barometer of, no, that's against my free will and against who I am as a person. Like, that's the reason you got all of these experiences. So like, how important is having that personal barometer of, this is my passion, this is what I want to do, and I won't make a sacrifice if that means I'm sacrificing what I truly believe in and what I want? Like, how important has that been for you?
It's like super. Sometimes it's just like secondary, and it's not even. And to one of my flaws, I can definitely be impulsive, and I just like see something, I want to do it, and I don't necessarily like think through all of and that's something I actively like work on a daily basis to like be less like that. And I was definitely like that a lot more as a kid. And so it's not always just like thinking in that mindset, but it's just like it's easy to chase sort of immediate gratification. And I did that for a really long time, and that informed a lot of my decisions. And now I'm realizing that, while I do want to stick to my values and what's important to me and what I actually believe makes me happy, I'm realizing more and more like to actually get to a place of true fulfillment, like sacrifices are going to have to be made. Like, you're not always just going to be traveling the world or jumping from job to job. And, people are like, oh, like you're always traveling, you're doing this stuff. It looks so glamorous. Like, one, it's like I'm like staying in like little hostels and shit like that. It's not like bougie traveling. And two, it's also like not having a sense of like structure and routine is like can be very like jarring and daunting, and like will give me a lot of anxiety. And so realizing that I have to make sacrifices to get in the long term to a place where I know I will be fulfilled, that's sort of what I've been realizing a lot more recently, which sounds like obvious, but it's taken me 24 years to really like grasp that. And of course I would, when I was younger, say that like, oh yeah, I understand that, but you don't really know until you have to make those decisions. But I think that, staying in line with your values and what is like fulfilling to you is that's really what's most important. But, you got to make sacrifices for your family. You got to make sacrifices for the people you love. And that comes first and foremost. And, I unfortunately have lost a lot of really close people in my life over the past few years. And that's like really pushed me in a direction of like, okay, like one, I need to, find my fulfillment for me and like what actually makes me happy. But I also have to realize that like there's people that care about me and people that I care about, and they have certain expectations and they have certain needs, and making sacrifices for them is just as important as staying true to who you are and doing the things that you want to do. So it's a balancing act. And it's, I haven't figured it all out yet. I don't, I'm still struggling to, find that thing and to, find that perfect balance. But realizing that and not being so just like driven by, okay, like I want to do these things because I think they're cool or they'll make me happy, and realizing that beyond that, like I have to think about my parents, my brother, my close friends, my family, the people that have given me these opportunities and allowed me to live the life that I want to live and who've supported me, wholeheartedly through all of it. Like you got to make sacrifices for those people, and you're going to do things that you might not want to do. And whether that means like, taking a job that you don't want to do because it pays you enough money to send money home or help support someone, those are the things that sometimes you just have to do. And so again, it's just like a balancing act, but staying true to yourself is, first and foremost. And that's, very important. And like I said earlier, like if you don't care about something, in my opinion, you're never going to find fulfillment. And for some people, caring about other people is what gives them fulfillment. And so they just do things that they might not like, but they know that it's going to provide something for their family, their loved ones, or for others. And that's, that is something, again, like that's my level of how I gauge, like, not, I don't want to say like respect for people, but that's like what I admire and respect out of people is like people who care about something and can make those sacrifices and sacrifice their self sometimes to put others first. So a long-winded answer to that is just like, it's a balancing act between staying true to yourself and having that barometer, but then also realizing that you got to make sacrifices for the people that, support you and bring you up, and make you the person that you are.
Well said.
Beautifully said. I think you just wrapped up the entire conversation in a bow and shipped it off. So I think we can end it there. But man, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
Been a great convo. So episode
Would love to do it again. This is I had a lot more fun with this than I was expecting as well. I was a little nervous, I'm not gonna lie. So this is dope.
Thank you.
Awesome,
brother.
man. Thank you so much.
Of course.
All right.